Hello, today I'm going to be checking out the latest case from Lian Li, the SUP-01. This case is available from today in both black and white and has an MSRP of $149.99. But should this be your next case, let's take a closer look. So the first thing I'm noticing when taking a look at this case is how tall it is compared to its other dimensions. And in doing this, Lian Li seemed to be trying to keep the footprint on your desk to a minimum, but still allowing compatibility for large modern components. Our tempered glass side panel can simply be pulled off from the side, and the other side panel is removed in exactly the same way. There's no additional dust filters behind this panel, but as the holes in the mesh are quite fine, and this side is designed to be as exhaust, a dust filter shouldn't really be needed. The mesh panel on the top of the case can simply be pushed off from the top, and under it we do have a magnetically attached dust filter. The mesh component of our front panel can be pulled off from the front, and again behind it we've got another magnetically attached dust filter. Taking a look at the bottom of this panel, we've got our power and reset button, and it's actually the Lian Li logo, which is the power and reset button. Moving around to the side of the case and taking a look at the rest of our I/O, we've got two USB Type A ports, a single Type C port, a combined headphone and microphone jack, and then we've got mode and cutter buttons to cycle through the ARGB effects on our case's built-in controller. So that controller is going to be controlling ARGB lighting bars on the front and side of the case, as well as on our PCIe riser cable. So Lian Li have designed this case to have separate chambers for your graphics card, your CPU cooler, and your motherboard, with each of them having their own independent airflow path. So your graphics card is going to be mounted upright at the front of the case with the I/O down towards the bottom, and it's going to be intaking cooler from the mesh panel at the front of the case, and at the rear of the case we've got three 120mm fans set as exhaust, designed to be taking that hot air from your graphics card out the side of the case. You're going to mount your I/O in the radiator bracket towards the rear of the case, and this will accommodate all up to a 360 or 280mm radiator, up to a maximum combined thickness for your fans and radiator of 76mm. Like the fans beside it, Lian Li recommend having this set to exhaust, and your source of fresh air is the perforations in the rear panel. This is also going to be the source of intake for your motherboard compartment, and in the case accessory box we get a fan bracket allowing you to install a 120mm fan on the rear of the case, and again Lian Li recommend having this set to intake. And we've got a little cutout below the fan to pass your fan cable through. As well as providing some cooler to your I/O, this fan is also going to provide cooler to your motherboard and the components you've installed in it. And from the motherboard component, any hot air is going to be exhausted passively out the top of the case. So in terms of mounting your graphics card at the front of the case, there's a removable bracket down at the bottom which is held on with one screw, and you're going to be able to mount this to your graphics card outside the case before inserting it back in. When you set the graphics card in, there is some movement both left and right, allowing you to get your graphics card centered up. Or if you do have a particularly long graphics card, it is possible to install it down in the lower slot. And again, in this slot, we do have some horizontal movement in a left or right position. Once you've got your graphics card in the position you want, you just need to replace the screw you removed earlier on. The SUP-01 supports graphics cards up to a maximum length of 400mm, but to get this compatibility, you are going to have to install it in the lower slot. And there's also a support bracket at the top of the case, which does a great job of holding your graphics card in place. Once you've got your graphics card secured, connecting it up to the 51mm Gen 4 PCIe riser cable is fairly straightforward. We've got a little rubber grommet in the back of the case to pass your DisplayPort or HDMI cable through, and there's two clips in the top of the power supply shroud to help keep this cable organised. In terms of motherboard support, the case supports standard ATX, micro ATX and mini ATX motherboards. You'll notice that we do have some additional cutout for back connector motherboards, but it is only ATX motherboards with back connectors that are supported. In terms of CPU cooler height, this is very limited in the main body of the case at only 88mm, and really Lian Li have designed this case to be used with a liquid cooler. At the rear of the case we've got 7 half-height PCIe expansion slots, and the one with the missing bracket is where you're going to be installing your riser cable. Again, these half-height brackets aren't really meant for installing your graphics card, it's designed to be installed at the front of the case, but if you do want to use an add-in card, you'll find these particularly useful. It is possible to remove the pillar on the side of the case. It's held on with a screw on each side, and once it's been removed, you can simply lift the pillar away. To remove our side fan and radiator brackets and also to install our I/O, we're going to need to remove a panel at the top. Each of our fan and radiator brackets are held on with a single screw, and once the screw has been removed, the bracket can be tilted out. We've got rubber pegs on the bottom of this bracket, and this is going to allow you to tilt it out, and the rubber pegs are going to keep it held in place. And this is going to be particularly useful should you want to do some cable management or make some changes with your I/O or fans already installed. You can see on our fan bracket we've got three 120mm non-ARGB PWM fans installed. These are all daisy chained together, so there's just one fan cable to plug into a header on the motherboard. In terms of installing your Aiyo, it's going to go in the other bracket, as we've mentioned, set to exhaust. You're going to then be able to pass your tubes over the top of the motherboard panel, and we've got a Velcro cable strap at the back of the case to help organize your tubes. In terms of cable management coming from Lian Li, this looks to be excellent. We've got a plastic clip at the top for managing your EPS cables and plenty of Velcro cable straps in sensible locations. On the bottom of our motherboard compartment we've got a mirror, and as well as improving the aesthetics of the case, it also hides your SSD mounting slots in the main body of the case. Beneath this you're going to be able to mount two 2.5-inch drives with the connectors coming out towards the second compartment. We've also got a hard drive cage where you can mount either two 2.5-inch or two 3.5-inch drives. The case is compatible with full-sized ATX power supplies up to a maximum length of 220mm, and it's great to see at the back of the case we've got a removable power supply bracket, which should simplify the installation. And on the bottom of the case we've got a tray-style dust filter over our power supply's intake fan. Another nice feature we've got at the rear of the case is we've got plenty of Velcro cable straps managing the cables coming down from your motherboard. So what I want to do now is give you a closer look at the build I put together in the case. Taking a look at our temperatures, our i9-14900K being cooled by a 360mm Aiyo idled at 30 degrees and reached a maximum of 100 degrees during a 10-minute IDA64 stability test. During that test there was up to 4% thermal throttling. The Aorus Master RTX 4070 idled at 27 degrees and reached a maximum of 51 degrees during the stability test. In terms of noise, we had average noise levels of 34 decibels at idle and 51 decibels under load. So in terms of the temperatures, the i9-14900K is a really difficult CPU to cool, and it quite often runs about 2 degrees hotter with up to about 16-17% thermal throttling. So having only 4% thermal throttling and run at 100 degrees is actually pretty good. The 4070 is actually a pretty easy GPU to cool, but these temperatures are as low as I've got it in any case. So moving on to my experience of building in the case, and given that this case has quite an unusual layout, it was actually really straightforward to build in, and I didn't really run into any issues at all during the build. I think steps that you're going to want to take to avoid any problems, I would make sure to do all the cable management behind the motherboard before installing your side fan or radiator brackets, and the clips that Lian Li included made cable management an absolute breeze. So moving on to the things I liked about the case, and the first thing I like about this case is it does exactly what Lian Li intended it to. It takes up quite a small footprint on your desk, but because it is so tall, you can still fit large modern components in it. The other thing is the cooling solution that Lian Li have gone with these three separate chambers, one for your graphics card, one for your CPU cooler, and one for your motherboard, really seems to work because the temperatures I got in this case were excellent. I also think it's a good idea that they decided to go with the upright GPU with the Aiyo at the bottom rather than at the top, because in some of the O11 cases, GPUs with the Aiyo at the top I did find they overheated, whereas at the Aiyo at the bottom, none of the GPUs I had overheated. And also routing cables to the Aiyo at the bottom is going to be much easier as well. So as you'd expect coming from Lian Li, the build quality throughout is absolutely flawless. The panels come off toollessly. I love the Lian Li logo at the front being the power and reset button. And the ARGB effects on the bars in the front, the side and the riser cable look really well. And it's great to have those control buttons on the side of the case to cycle through the various ARGB effects. So moving on to the things I didn't like about the case, and there's not an awful lot to say here. So while I was impressed that there was removable dust filters on the front and top of the case, I can understand why there wasn't on the mesh side panel, given that it is going to be set to exhaust. But given the fact that we are having the back of the case set to intake, there's large unfiltered perforations in the back of the case, and I would worry that they're going to be drawing dust in. I think the only other thing to say about this case is the aesthetics won't suit everybody. I think given the fact that this is a really tall case, it does look a little bit out of proportion on the desk. But again, if you've got a limited space on your desk for a case, having this type of orientation is going to allow you to fit an awful lot in a very small footprint. A few other things that I think didn't look particularly great, and it was really that having that riser cable down at the bottom half of the motherboard. I don't think it looked particularly well. Initially I thought the mirror at the bottom was going to look really good, but when you look into it, all you can really see is your rubber grommets at the bottom and all your cables plugging into the bottom of the motherboard. So we've now reached the stage in review where I need to tell you, should you go out and pick up this case? Now, for less than $150, I do think you are getting incredibly good value for money, particularly when you factor in the 3 included case fans and the really long Gen 4 riser cable. In terms of aesthetics, they are in the eye of the beholder. To me, I much prefer the look of the O11 Evo or the O11 Vision, but this case is significantly smaller, particularly in terms of the width. So if you do have a small desk, and you do like the aesthetics of this case and you want to fit large modern hardware in it with great cooling, good build quality and an easy build experience, I can most definitely recommend this case to you. If you are thinking of doing a build in the case, I have made a full step-by-step build guide in it, and I'll put a link to that video in the description. And if you have enjoyed this review, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.